I've always aimed to run my freelance business with long-term stability in mind. Call me old-fashioned, I've always wanted freelance over a 9-to-5, but I did want to recreate that consistency that 9-to-5s do provide. Because of that, I took on clients from the beginning that I intended on having forever. Obviously, a way to do that is to look for full or part-time jobs and to avoid jobs that look like they may be temporary or situational. However, getting a client is one thing. Keeping a client is another thing. Today, we're diving into client retention and how we can all get better at it. So let's get into it. What is client retention? Client retention, when it comes to freelance video editing, is basically what I just said before. It's the ability to maintain long-term relationships with your clients and secure repeat business with them in the future. Instead of constantly searching for new clients, retaining existing ones ensures a much more steady stream of recurring projects and income. Now, of course, there might be some challenges with this that are relatively unavoidable or out of your control. I've had a client in the past that seemed like it was a forever client that was just long-term social media work, but they were incredibly inconsistent. They would hit me up a couple times in month 1 and then not hit me up again until month 4. There's also the situation that clients evolve into something that you no longer offer or that you can't offer. And that might be out of your control, but it definitely is going to be unavoidable for you. You can't do anything about those clients that just decide that their needs have changed. And then of course, there's also clients who decide that they can no longer afford you. Maybe you've outgrown each other. Maybe you started at a lower rate and over the course of time, you've either increased your rate with them, or even if you haven't increased your rate, they realize that paying you and what they're making money off of with those videos that they're paying you for is just not lining up. And that's happened to me as well. And it is just a part of freelancing. And again, there's not much that you can do to avoid that. Honestly, that might even be a good sign that you are growing as well as a freelance video editor. But that's just the general challenges of freelancing. Now, even though some of these things we can't help, we also could be implementing strategies that put our best foot forward to become the kind of service provider that your client simply cannot live without. That's ultimately the goal. So how do we do that? Let's talk about first impressions first. This is one of those tips that kind of goes across the board with any relationship that you form with literally any human being, is having a good first impression. It's not so much just about how much you can impress that client with your work. It's also you coming across as a person that your client likes as a person. So finding common ground with your potential client, maybe sharing common interests, coming across friendly and a little bit funny, and then coming across really understanding and empathetic of their needs, letting the client do most of the talking and using nonverbal behavior to make sure that you ensure that you look like you're listening and that you're paying attention to them and you're understanding them, not taking over the conversation to tell them about your needs or your issues or your past too much. Ultimately, these little things are building that foundation to make it so the client, yes, may hire you, which is all great, but more important than that, they are then connected to you from these common things that you gained from your first impression. Personalization. I feel like it can be really easy and enticing to, when you're setting up your freelance business, set up a kind of a system of how you're going to take on new clients, how you're going to edit their projects for them, the process that you're going to use, what that output is going to look like, having that all in your head. And to that, there is some benefit of having a system in place so that if a client does come to you and they say, hey, I need your help with video, I have no idea where to start, I've never done this before, you have that system in place to be able to take them in and say, great, you're gonna be, a part of my system, here's how we do things here, here's what I'm gonna need from you, and then ultimately, here's some examples of what your video is going to inevitably look like, which can be really helpful for them. I do feel that there is some importance of reading into your client, reading between those lines, of seeing how they're feeling about what they want when you first interact with them. Are they coming across saying, I have no idea what I want to put this all in your hands and put it all on you, I got no idea what to do, I'm not a video person, I just want to be able to have a YouTube channel, for example? Or are they coming into the conversation with some thoughts and opinions, with some insights of of what they've done in the past, what's worked for them in the past, what they would like their videos to look like. Maybe they are kind of a mixture between the two. I think there is some importance here of listening to your client, truly understanding what they want their videos to look like, making sure that they're coming across unique, and of course, centering back to making sure your client feels heard, that you're not going to steamroll over them just because you have more video editing experience and video creation experience, that you're going to listen to their needs and their wants and work with them to make a video that they will ultimately really, really love and be impressed by. Communication. Again, we are centering around making sure the client feels heard. And now we're making sure the client feels heard literally. There is honestly no such thing as over communicating, I don't think. I think when in doubt, respond to the email. When in doubt, check in with the client. I've literally had clients tell me in the past that me checking in with them every week or whatever our schedule is keeps them accountable to make more videos for me. Like, it keeps them on a schedule as well. So instead of you just waiting around saying, okay, when's the next video? You should absolutely be, number one, checking in with them from the beginning to kind of set up some sort of schedule if you are going to be doing this on some sort of consistency or some sort of system for a long-term project, and then following up with them and checking in with them. Because again, sometimes some clients need some form of accountability in this. If they are going to be sending you videos that you are then editing for them every week, you checking in with them every Tuesday of every week to make sure that they are sending that to you, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that that keeps them accountable, and ultimately that shows to them that you are aligned with their goals, that they told you from the beginning that you want to post X amount of times per week. And so you being aligned with their goals and you showing them that, ultimately, like, that can't be a bad thing, right? Consistent quality. You know, of course, it's one thing to want to really hype on that first impression and deliver your very best possible work to the client for their first video, so then make sure that they fall in love with you and they just need you for every single video after this. Fantastic. What's going to happen 6, 16, 64 videos from now? Are you going to get a little lazy? Are you going to start cutting back on that effort because you're kind of getting tired of editing for this client? It's great to leave that first impression of your best editing work in that first video. I think what's more important is definitely understanding the client's needs, and does this video serve that purpose to serve their needs, and not just trying to impress them with your video editing ability, and being able to know yourself and know that I know myself. I know that this video, this work that I put in matches the kind of work that I can do on a consistent level. I'm not going to be overworking myself. This comes natural to me. It comes easy to me to do this kind of work. Maybe if you're a little bit challenged, you can learn how to overcome that challenge easily. You can learn how to even streamline your workflow over time with this client by doing little things and templates and things like that to make your work easier. But ultimately, the consistency is going to be the thing that your client notices over time. And I think that is something personally that I have found to be my greatest compliment with some of my past clients or current clients, of them telling me that they appreciate my consistency. I just think that's something that might be hard to find nowadays. And ultimately, that is what some of these clients are looking for. They're not maybe looking for the greatest possible editing you've ever seen in your whole life. They're just looking for someone who can consistently deliver the videos that they asked for in a normal turnaround time, and it's someone that they can just rely on for these videos. And so if you can do that every day, every week, every month, it is going to serve you a lot more than just learning every possible thing about editing and having the very best editing skills. Consistency is what is going to drive that client retention. Client feedback. How are you responding if and when clients give you feedback? I think that this can constantly be improved. I'm not the exception to this. I think that I also can always be improving my client feedback as well. Making sure that, one, hopefully you don't have a lot of feedback, to be honest. And if you do, you are then learning more and more about the client, so much so that over time, there will be less and less feedback because you have grown to learn so much about what the client needs and how they like their videos to be done. That should ultimately be the goal, I think. And separate from that, when you are receiving that feedback, I think it can be easy for someone like me to see feedback and immediately get on the defensive. And even in a situation where you might be right and it might be deserved for you to get on the defensive, it's not going to help you in the long run with this client. So unless you're trying to ditch this client and you're just trying to get the work over with, coming across understanding, patient, and willing to do the work is, of course, also going to be appreciated by your client. So as much as you can hold back, even if it means typing out a very defensive email and then deleting it and typing out a little bit of a nicer email, I think that is going to do you a lot of good with your client retention. Adding value. You know, earlier I talked about some things that are out of your control. And one of those things could potentially be your client has evolved into something that you don't offer anymore. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. What if there is? What if there is something you can do about it? What if they make it known that they are looking for a different type of editing style or more motion graphics, and that's not something that you are comfortable with yet? Are you going to step up to the plate and say, oh yeah, I can absolutely work, I can work with you and change my editing style? Or are you going to say, listen, this is my editing style. You said you wanted the videos this way. This is what we agreed upon. This is how I'm doing the videos. It's tricky. I personally think, what does it hurt to learn this additional new skill that's ultimately going to make you more sellable in the long run after you learned it? And if it means keeping the client is learning this new skill or this new type of editing or what have you, I don't really see the con of that. And I'll also say that keeping this in mind before you even get a client is also really important. Understanding video editing is great. That's important. We're all video editors. We need to know how to do that. So many times video editors are also graphic designers. They're also audio engineers. They're also motion graphics specialists. It's an unfortunate truth of the situation that we are in this industry. You sometimes have to be a little bit of everything. Heck, I mainly gravitate towards being more of a coordinator and a social media manager. Sometimes you got to be both. If it means adding more value to your job and you as a person of the company that you're working for, I think it's worth it. I'd love to hear your comments below if you don't. I think it is something in our industry that I don't think is going away. And so if we can just do our best to think ahead of the game and think, how can I add more value by just learning new skills before I even bring on a new client? So by the time that client finds me and sees everything that I have to offer, of course they're going to want to go with me over some other guy. Being a pleasure to work with. This is kind of similar to the first impressions chat we had earlier. Sometimes it's not about the work. It's just about the client experience. And you can be the best video editor that they have ever worked with. But if you are a difficult person to speak to or just not a nice person to speak to, I just don't see the client wanting to stick around. I think that ultimately, if and when they find a nicer, more positive person to be around that also edits, why wouldn't they move to them? I think this is another tough truth of just job industry in general. Sometimes you can be really good at your job, but because you have a personality that conflicts with other people, you don't get said job. You get passed up on some job or whatever the case. I was talking to my friend about this the other day, actually, about how just our personalities growing up and just the kind of strategies that you take on as a human being, like learning how to be more social or fit in better growing up. And I had noted that I believed myself to be a master mirror. Mirroring is a social strategy, I guess, where every person that you talk to, you essentially take on their personality or their behaviors as a way to relate to them, get along with them, and fit in. We were talking about the pros and cons of that. And I firmly believe that being a master mirror has helped me greatly in getting the jobs that I have. And not only getting the jobs, but keeping the jobs, because people enjoy talking to me. Shocker, they enjoy talking to me. I try and make myself as pleasurable to talk to as possible and as easy to talk to as possible using these strategies. This is not something that just happened overnight. And some people don't have the ability to do this or the interest in doing this at all. But for me personally, that has helped me greatly. Now, I'm not saying you should go out there and learn how to mirror other people's personalities, but I do think there is some value of learning just how to generally talk to people, how to be a nice person to talk to, how to have small talk, how to be polite, how to be socially funny and witty. You know, these things are learned behaviors that we as humans learn over time that can take sometimes years to learn. And it only improves for me by talking to more and more people and learning from more and more people. And ultimately, I do think that has helped me. So I think in general, just being a pleasure to work with is something that will keep you employed, especially because of the lack of communication that we're having right now as a society with the upcoming generation. So sorry, no offense, but I've heard horror stories about the younger generation and how they're not so great at communicating. So if you do have that skill, that is going to help you a lot more than you would think in keeping your job. Now that you've got everything you need to know about how to turn a one-time interaction with your client into a long-term relationship, check out this video next to make sure that you are not actually scaring the client away entirely. Be sure to subscribe for more tips on video editing and freelance lifestyle. Thank you to my team. Again, I am Colleen and I will catch you guys in the next video. Have the best one.